All right, part two of Mr. Nichols' lessons while I'm on quarantine. We were talking about what the colonial life was like living in the colonies, and the next topic we're going to come to is school. What was it like to be you at this day and age, and what you're going through? Um, First off, school was slow to expand. It didn't really take off in Massachusetts like it should, and then in Connecticut and Rhode Island because of the religious differences. The main book that they're going to use to read and to study and to teach everything is going to be the Bible. And how you interpret the Bible will depend on a lot of times when you're reading it, talking about like predestination and all those kind of things that divide religions today. Well, those things, remember we talked about the colonies starting to expand, those things kind of divided them there because then what passage do you use in school? If your teacher goes to this denomination and they're teaching this passage, are they trying to teach your children? So it was slow to expand because of that religious difference, and the main book was the Bible. But that was the whole reason they wanted schools. Remember, these are the people that came over here right after the King James Bible was published. They realized they needed to read it for themselves. That's the whole start of the separatists coming over here, and the Puritans wanting to purify the church once they could read the Bible for themselves. Well, if a parent has been exposed to this and finds the truth of the Bible, what they're saying, they want their children to then also. And so the main goal of school was to send your kid someplace so they could learn to read, be able to read the Bible. They could be able to write. They could handle the marriage certificates, death certificates, things like that. And just the basic skills that you needed for the day. A little bit of math. We're not talking algebra type math. If you could add, subtract, multiply, divide, the things that you needed as a normal person, then you could handle it. And so the rich people had always had schools going on over here and stuff like that. They had tutors. They would hire somebody to specifically work with their kid and everything like that. But your common ordinary person didn't have that. They had their kids, remember, once again, 90% on small farms. When you're on the small farm and everything, you're teaching your child, which means you still got to go out there and rake the leaves. You still got to go bring in the corn. You still got to go cut the firewood. So you're either teaching your kid while you're talking or you're setting a little time aside in the evening. It wasn't as the 8 hours a day that you guys are used to today. But when you were there, it was totally different. People were very serious about school. They didn't play around. There was no goofing off because they had some strict punishments. They would literally, I mean, they would come at you with the little dunce caps that they wore. They come at you with the sticks and hit you and stuff like that. It was straight school, which once again, we've talked about that in my class. It's not like it was all the time. You just, once that example had been made of one kid, everybody pretty much towed the line. Um, so what happened then, you're going to see it start to expand. Let's go to the next slide. New England passes a law that every town, if you have at least 50 families, you have to have a school. Then there has to be a place for it. Well, let me restate that. You had to hire a teacher. You had to hire a teacher. You didn't have to have a specific building. You could meet in someone's barn. You could meet in someone's house. You could meet in the church. You could meet some places. But if there was at least 50 families, you had to have a teacher. And so there was school going on once you had 50 families. But you're talking 50 families, you had a good little sized town and everything like that because each family is going to have 10 or so kids, now different ages, and people are not all going to be at school at the same time. You're not going to go to school from age 5 until age 18. You're maybe going to start at age 5 and quit at age 9, quit at age 10, tops. I mean, you guys would not even be in school now. You would be having jobs. Some of you be getting married and stuff like that at your age. It was you moved on, and so they passed a law that if you have at least 50 families, you have to have a teacher. Well, then they also passed a law, a blue law again. Once again, remember they were written on blue paper. That's where we get the word blue laws from. Is the Puritans' law system. If you had 100 families, you had to build a school, had to have a place for them to meet and everything like that. And so once they do that, you start to see schools pick up and the education start to go. The teachers were paid by whatever the students could bring to them. I mean, if your dad cut firewood for a living, you probably brought me some firewood. If your dad raised chickens, you brought some eggs to school or something like that. And so the teacher wasn't exactly getting a set salary. He got everybody could afford to give to them. So you try to be a really good teacher because I guess you wanted your people to be giving you stuff that you liked and everything. Like I said, they did taught reading, writing, basic math. Most didn't go past elementary age. Other things that are just interesting about this, they didn't have like what you guys picture today, your paper and pencil and everything. They would actually take a lot of times bark off a tree. And if you ever peeled bark off a tree and you can see it's got a flat side to it, you could take something and write on the other side and everything like that. A lot of times they would do their work on bark if it was something they were working out. And they would also use a lot of chalkboard and chalk. You kids do not remember. I still even remember when I was a kid, chalkboards being in the schoolroom, and that's what the teachers wrote on. But each kid would have an individual little chalkboard in front of them and a piece of chalk, and they would actually sit there and do the work, show the teacher, and then wipe it off and do it again like that. So it was a total different scene, like I say, than what you guys are used to in school today. But it was, like I said, once again, it was about educating their kids in the Bible and being able to move them on in dealing with matters of affair that they would have to deal with in life. So things like that. And let me try and go to the next one. Marriage and death. You are going to see some large families, and I even mentioned this to my class earlier. The first time, you're probably marrying for love. The second, third, fourth time, you're marrying out of necessity because a lot of people died a lot of different ways back then. I mean, you'd have logging accidents, all sorts of things would take somebody down. And so if I was married and had 5 kids and all of a sudden my wife passed on or something like that, she died of something, I'm going to marry pretty quickly because I've got all these kids at home that I can't take care of them out doing my job. Or if the wife was alive and the husband passed on and everything, she's going to have to marry quickly because she has no income. She can be taking care of the children, but she's going to get remarried too. So you do see a lot of blended families, and that's one of the reasons you'll see 10 and 20 kids in a family. And so sounds like a lot, but once again, half of all children died before they reached adulthood. You got a 50-50 shot of making it to what we call adulthood, your 20s and 30s and stuff like that. Before something's going to happen, there was a lot of childhood diseases and things that happened. And so we lost a lot of people. Families, they work together and everything a lot because you were out a lot of times, like I said, 90% family farms. You're out on your family farm and you may be raising sugar cane and you get all this sugar cane in and everything. Well, then you're going to have what's called a bee. Now, you've heard of quilting bees and things like that. We'll talk about today and stuff like that. And that's exactly where it comes from, like the BEE. They all work together in one hive to make the product and everything. You would have a bunch of people come over and they would all work the sugar cane together. They would all work the molasses together. They would all bring in the corn together. And if I had the sugar cane, everybody comes into my house and works all day Saturday, and there may be 5 families. Well, the next Saturday, all of us are going over to the next guy's house and we're bringing in corn all day and everything like that. It helped in the fact it broke up monotony. I mean, if you've ever done work by yourself over and over and over and over, it's hard. But then if someone's there with you, a friend, and you're joking and you're laughing while you're doing the work, it doesn't seem as tedious or a hard problem. And so having other people there to be able to laugh, joke with, and things like that, and to have that big workforce is how you're going to see a lot of things get done. If you're going to build a house, it's not just one guy out there building. He may have 4 or 5 families come over and they help him. And then when they need a barn, he's helping them. Families had to rely on each other. Like I said, you had quilting bees, chopping bees, sugarcane bees, molasses bees. Although the kids at Sweet Plains, they had quilting D's and F's mainly. But, you know, that's an education. And if anybody was offended last time by the Sweet Plains jokes, I will set it on text. That way people from that Sweet Plains can't read it and we won't have to worry about them being offended. And if they're from one of the places, they don't have internet, so they're not offended either. So, all right, back to this then. Sorry about that. Had to jump that in there. Let's go to the next slide. What was your toys and your free time like? Didn't have a lot of free time. Didn't have a lot of time to be by themselves and just to relax. But in the evenings when the sun went down, they did have things they did. If you had a doll, you see the first one there was talking about dolls and things like that. If you had a doll, it was usually handmade. It was something that they made out of corn husks. If you've ever seen a corn husk doll, they would take the corn husk and they would, pull them around and make it into little doll shape. Your dad might take a stick and he may whittle you a little doll or something like that to have. But you didn't have where you went to the stores and bought toys for your children. You might take a tree and whittle your kid a little toy gun or something. But it wasn't just toys, toys, toys like you think of today. In fact, the very first doll, this is interesting, was brought over in 1699 by William Penn. He had it imported from England and brought over here, which was interesting. Let's go back to what you know about William Penn and everything. He was the Quaker. They do not have any flash. They didn't have any, here's the dude who gives up all that money in England to be able to get land, and then gives his money away buying land over here, buying it off the Native Americans again, who's living the life of poverty. But I think this says so much about him. What is the first thing you see that he's importing? The niceties. It's for his kid. It's for his daughter. That just says even more about William Penn. You see the father's heart right there. That, yeah, we don't do flash, but this is my little girl, man. I'm going to get her a doll. And so 1699, we're right before 1700, before the first toy is imported into America like that from England. And it was for William Penn's little girl. Although that would have been a freaky little doll that would have been like in a Child's Play type movie. I mean, one of those freaky horror movies, because the doll had a wooden body and the head was made of plaster, and they take like glass eyes, like people would have the glass. They actually had 2 glass eyes in that thing, and the hair was real human hair sewn down into the plaster. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing when I see that doll. But for William Penn, it was the first, nice toy thing he could get for his daughter, and I thought that was just really cool. They did have some time down that they would play games. One of the big games everybody liked, the boys, was marbles. You draw a circle in the thing, you put your marbles in there, and you got one that you shoot with, and you get down and you shoot it in, and the marbles you knock out, the ones you keep. Parents got a little upset because it was like an early form of gambling, and so if you kept the other marbles, you were gambling, and so that upset them some. But the boys, they love to play marbles because you just carry those around anywhere you wanted to play. Draw a circle in the ground, sit there, and start to shoot the marbles and everything like that. Another one was interesting, was stool ball. And that is not where you play with your poop. That's a total different use of stool altogether right there. Chucking that around. But stool ball, the reason they call that, it looks like the leg of a stool. It was a literal just stick. And they would throw a little ball at it, and you'd swing. Does anybody get where this is like? It's a lot like baseball. It's actually, it's right up there. It's a forerunner with cricket. You don't understand cricket. It's an English game or Australian game, which is the forerunner of baseball. They have a paddle, they throw it at, and they kind of knock it out. It's pretty much a lot of the same concepts and stuff. So they had things like that. Baseball is not going to get going until the 1880s and stuff like that. With Abner Doubleday is going to get some of that stuff going. So that's when you see baseball take off. But before that, they had what is called stool ball. You'll see in the next page and everything a picture of people, they still play it today and everything like that. But it's kind of like baseball. So they had things like that. This messes with everybody's mind. Every town, I don't care which town you went to, if it was a little town, had a bowling alley. And this is going to make you understand why we call it the things we do. Why do we call it a bowling alley? It usually was an alley between 2 buildings. Just literally was an alley. And what they would do is they had the 9 pins, and you would go stand them up. They're not like our bowling pins today. Ours are wide on the bottom with a little head and everything, kind of like people from Sweet Plains. And they have a redneck too around them. They're redneck. I'm just saying. All right. So our bowling pins today look like that. These were almost like sticks, and they would stick 9 of them in the ground right there, and you would throw down, and maybe you knocked over 1 or 2. And then it's the next guy's, and he's trying to get 1 again. And you keep going until somebody's knocked all 9 down. All 9 are down. And if all 9 are down, that means somebody had 5, somebody had 4. It was an odd number. And so somebody's going to win. And what they did was they started betting on this. And in Puritan, Massachusetts, bowling has started to become like, oh my word, we can't keep bowling because all the guys are betting on it. They're gambling. And so they added a 10th pin. And if you look at bowling pins today, they have 10 pins. Why? It goes back to the 1600s because of the fact that people were gambling on it, and 9 pins was outlawed. And today, it's still called the bowling alley. We still use 10 pins, but this all comes from the love of bowling. And now, it did not have a wood alley. It's almost like bocce ball today, where it's out on the grass and everything like that. Like I say, literally an alley between 2 things. That way, you had a little straight path is basically what it was. And so every town had bowling because people would wait for hours to just get in on a bowling game. I mean, that just blows my mind to think that was the main sport. They also They played cards some and everything, but a lot of that was more the southern colonies. The northern colonies are not, they're going to frown on that because of the gambling aspect also with that. Down south, you're getting into the colonies that are the southern colonies of Virginia and things like that. They were about money. And so they weren't about the morals. So your middle colonies, your New England colonies, they didn't really play as much cards. Southern place played cards a lot, but they did have them. Cockfighting was a big thing. It's still a thing around here today. I hate to tell you. If you drive around some of these little roads, you'll see those little, looks like every chicken's got its own house. That's because those are fighting roosters, in case you want to know what that is. Yeah, that still goes on. People would go and they would, once again, they would gamble on that and everything. And that is just two chickens, two roosters going till one dies is what that is. Another thing that is interesting is they would have fox hunts where you get all these guys on horse and you bunch of dogs and chase that one fox. You'd also have bull baiting. Now this is an interesting sport, and this is once again, I love all these little things you get to learn because this is where the names come from. Bull baiting was this: you would take a fenced-in area so the bull could be in there. A lot of times they would have a little pit dug and everything to area. That's where you're going to get some of these words that come from. And they would put the bull down in there, and they'd throw a bunch of dogs in. And the dogs were trained to try and bite the bull. And so the bull is trying to fend off and fight off all these dogs that are attacking it. And how the game works is the first dog to bite the bull on the nose, all right, on the nose, no other place, but on the nose, is the guy who owns that dog is the winner, and he wins the game. And so you're talking a gutsy little dog to run up to the bull and chomp down on its nose is how you win. The bull has a thing called horns, and the bull is ripping these dogs and tossing these dogs. It is just, it's sickening. It's really what it is. But this is where you then, if you get these dogs that are going to bite real quick, you've seen dogs biting and get away. You're going to have people going, hey, your dog didn't get the nose, it just caught the lip, or it caught the ear, or something like they didn't get the nose. And so people started training their dogs to, when they bite, to latch on and hold. And this is where you get a lot of these dogs like the bulldog coming from. A bulldog's a short, squatty little dog that will bite on and it will not let go and everything like that. You can lift them up. If you ever seen a bulldog, they can lift them up and they're just hanging there, hanging on to something that will not let go. Pit bull, are you starting to see where some of these come from? And it was a gross sport, but it was, I mean, a bunch of dogs attacking a bull, but the bull's, he's doing more damage to the dogs than the dogs are doing to the bull. I mean, I can't imagine. The reason I know it's so disgusting is I had a kid a couple years ago that pulled up on the internet, found, I don't know how to do it, so please don't, found the video of it over in Spain where they still do it today. And he, after me trying to go through it, he showed it to me. He came in the next day, he's like, look what I found. I was like, oh my word. Yeah, it's a gross, nasty sport, but that's what they loved. They loved the bull baiting. So they did have fun. Like I said, let me try and get to the next slide. Here we go. And I'll explain it to you. You can see in the top, to my left, I don't know which corner it is for y'all. Top left, you've got the stool ball going on with the ladies out there playing and everything like that. Like I say, you can see in the second picture, the middle at the top, that it is like a leg of a stool. I mean, that's made into more like a paddle. But you can almost see the forerunner of baseball. Top right, you're seeing the bull baiting. The bulldog's trying to latch onto that nose, and he's throwing them in the air. It is, I do not know who came up with that sport. That is why you don't, don't drink, people, don't drink. That's just, I'm sure that happened with that. That just, who came up with that? All right, bottom thing, you see that the chicken fighting with the, called gabs and knives is what they are. Today, when they chicken fight, they actually strap little knives onto the back of the chicken's feet. I don't know who decided to make chicken fight with knives, pull a knife on them, but, hey, that's a chicken fight. And there is a bunch of the chicken things they put on them right there, the spurs and the gabs and the knives. And then in the bottom left, you're seeing some guys on a fox hunt. But I'm at my 20-minute mark, and so I'm going to cut off here again, and we will pick up on the third one. Thank you.